The silence beneath the imperial palace was older than empires and thicker than the dust of extinct worlds. It pressed against the stone like a living thing, a weight that had grown heavy with 10,000 years of unspoken truths. Down here, beneath cathedrals of gold and monuments to a dying god, the air tasted of ancient oil and the faint copper sting of sacrifice. Every corridor felt like a throat, and every chamber like a lung that had forgotten how to breathe. At the heart of this underworld marched Inquisitor Kalen Meyer. His rosette glimmered faintly under the cold lumen strips, though no one was present to challenge it. Those who worked in these depths did so without hope of seeing the sun again. Even the highest-ranked adepts of the Adeptus Mechanicus whispered of this place with reverence and terror. They called it the Vault of Silence. Others called it the Threshold of the Throne. Kalen suspected these were polite ways of saying tomb. His escort was small. 2 Sisters of Silence, their faces locked behind emotionless masks, and an old tech adept whose metal limbs clattered with each careful step. None spoke. None dared. Words were too loud here, too alive, and the walls listened with ancient hunger. Kalen wasn't sure if he wanted to see what lay ahead. But the High Lords had issued a sealed decree, and sealed decrees did not care for mortal fear. A disturbance had been detected within the support crypts of the Golden Throne, a fluctuation, a tremor, something that should not exist. Anything connected to the throne was sacred. Anything connected to the throne that moved was catastrophic. The adept stopped before a final adamantium door layered with sigils so old they were half eroded. His voice was a mechanical scrape. Inquisitor. Beyond this threshold lies the conduit chamber. Access has been restricted for 912 years. Enter at your own authority. Kalen placed his palm against the surface. The seals stirred, reluctant, as if awakening from a long sleep. The air shook. The door sank slowly into the floor, letting out a sigh like a dying colossus. Inside, the glow was faint, pale, ghost-like, pulsing like the heartbeat of something buried alive. A massive column of gold and steel rose into the darkness above, vanishing into the miles-high machinery that fed the Golden Throne. Thousands of thick, vein-like cables connected it to the structure. The entire room whispered with power, but not the righteous kind. This was the deepest machinery of the Imperium's most forbidden truth. Kalen stepped forward. The sisters held position behind him like shadows carved from silence itself. Something moved. At first he thought it was a shift in the light. Then the glow pulsed again, and a shape emerged at the base of the conduit column, small, hunched, trembling. A human figure, bare-skinned except for cables drilled into its spine, shoulders, and skull. The body was frail, malnourished, trembling with each shallow breath. Eyes sealed shut by scar tissue. Lips stitched closed with metal wire. A psyker. Still alive. Still connected. Kalen felt his jaw tighten. This should be impossible, he whispered. All black ship psykers are processed. None are kept beneath the throne. None. But the figure stirred. The stitched mouth trembled, as if straining to speak through agony older than memory. The adept behind him shuddered. It is a stabilizer unit, Inquisitor. A failsafe for the Golden Throne. The Mechanicus records claim it was abandoned millennia ago. Yet, his voice faltered. It persists. Kalen stepped closer. The air grew colder. Heavy. Wrong. Then the psyker's blind head lifted. And something spoke. Not through the mouth. Not through the air. Inside Kalen's skull. You should not have come here. His heart slammed against his ribs. The sisters stiffened, blades drawn in absolute silence. Kalen swallowed. Identify yourself. The voice echoed again, softer now. I was the first anchor, the first sacrifice. The Emperor needed a bridge, and he built it with us. A cold dread wrapped tightly around Kalen's spine. This was no stabilizer. This was no leftover system. This was a secret the Imperium had buried beneath 10 millennia of worship and lies. A piece of the Emperor's survival that no human hand was ever supposed to witness. The psyker's scarred eyelids twitched, straining open, bleeding as they tore. They revealed no eyes, only white glowing voids. And now, the voice said, growing louder, the bridge is breaking. The glow from the psyker's empty sockets intensified, spilling across the chamber like liquid moonlight. Kalen flinched as the air vibrated with an invisible pressure, a sensation like dozens of hands clawing at the inside of his skull. The Sisters of Silence stepped forward instinctively, their null aura rippling across the floor like an invisible tide, suppressing the psychic pressure in jagged waves. The figure convulsed, its spine arching as sparks flickered along the cables embedded into its flesh. Then the voice returned, fractured now, strained, as though fighting through a storm. The bridge is failing. He cannot hold it alone. Not anymore. Kalen steadied himself. Explain. What is your function? The psyker's head tilted in a slow, unnatural movement. Function? There is no function in suffering, Inquisitor. There is only endurance. We were meant to last a month. Perhaps less. We have endured 10,000 years, without ending. Kalen's blood ran cold. We. The ground beneath them trembled, softly, but unmistakably. The conduits above flickered. The lumen strips along the ceiling dimmed and flared, creating shadows that moved like restless creatures. The tech adept recoiled, whispering Benharic prayers. Yes, the voice answered, fading and returning in pulses. We. The anchors. The forgotten ones. The Emperor's first choir. Bound to feed the throne, so that he might guide mankind through the wound he made in the sky. A low hum filled the chamber, growing deeper, heavier, vibrating Kalen's bones. The psyker leaned forward, straining against its restraints. But the cost, oh, Inquisitor, the cost has grown unbearable. The throne devours everything we are. Every day. Every moment. There is nothing left to give, and yet it demands more. Kalen forced himself to speak through the rising tension in his chest. Why reveal yourself now? The answer came like a thunderclap inside his thoughts. Because the throne is dying. The adept gasped, dropping to his knees as one of his mechadendrites sparked wildly. Impossible. This machinery is eternal. Maintained without interruption for millennia. The psyker's stitched mouth curled, stretching the wires until droplets of blood formed. Even the eternal decays. Lights overhead shattered. Darkness swept through the chamber before emergency lumens snapped on, flooding everything in a crimson wash. Warning runes activated across the walls. Kalen drew his sidearm, not because a bolt pistol would help him against a psyker of this magnitude, but because fear demanded ritual. The Sisters of Silence advanced in unbreaking formation, their presence smothering the air itself. The psyker writhed violently, twitching as though flayed by invisible blades. Its voice roared directly into Kalen's consciousness. Stop them. If the Sisters reach me, I will break, and so will the throne. Kalen lifted a hand toward the Sisters. Hold. Do not advance. The Sisters stopped instantly, though their emotionless masks betrayed nothing. Their null aura receded slightly, giving the psyker a moment of relief that looked almost like a dying breath. Kalen stepped closer, despite every instinct screaming at him to flee. Tell me what must be done. The psyker's glowing sockets dimmed, but its voice softened to a whisper made of pain and ancient memory. Listen carefully, Inquisitor, for the truth you seek will damn you. And the truth I give will damn us all. The chamber shuddered again, harder this time. Several conduits overhead snapped, raining sparks that hissed across the stone floor. Somewhere far above, deep in the layers of the throne's titanic structure, alarms began to wail. The psyker leaned forward, its body trembling like a dying flame. There is something beneath me, sealed away even deeper. Something older than the throne, older than the Imperium. If it wakes, none of us will survive. Kalen's eyes widened. What is beneath you? For the first time, the psyker hesitated. And when it answered, the chamber seemed to grow colder than space itself. Not what? Inquisitor. Who? Lights flickered again, the crimson glow stuttering like a dying heartbeat. Kalen stared at the psyker, unable to look away from the pale light leaking from its ruined sockets. The word who echoed through his mind long after the voice had fallen silent. A person. Something human, or once human, buried beneath the very mechanism that upheld the Imperium. Kalen swallowed. Who lies beneath you? The psyker trembled. For a moment, it looked as though the answer itself was tearing at the fragile strands of its existence. The cables attached to its spine rattled, as if caught in a violent storm. The first to fall, it whispered. The first to kneel. Kalen felt a chill settle into his bones. Speak plainly. The air cracked like lightning as the psyker's voice surged, louder, harsher, and infinitely more desperate. The one the Emperor trusted most. The one who saw further than any mortal mind should. The one whose soul was never allowed to die. A hollow boom resonated through the floor beneath their feet. Dust drifted from above, falling through the ruddy light. The tech adept scrambled backward, clinging to his data slate like a drowning man clutching driftwood. Kalen stepped closer. Are you speaking of a pre-march? The psyker twitched so violently that one of the metal stitches tore loose, blood streaking down its chin. No, the denial came like the roar of a collapsing star. Not a son, not a general, not a creature of war. The psyker lifted its shaking hand toward the floor. The Emperor buried his oracle beneath the throne. Kalen froze. Every fiber of his mind rejected the thought. No imperial scripture, no Mechanicus archive, no inquisitorial vault contained even a whisper of such a thing. The Emperor had no oracle, he breathed. The psyker's voice softened, a whisper of grief as ancient as the Imperium itself. He had won. And when Terra burned, when the gates fell, when his sons betrayed him, the oracle foresaw the ending of all things. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost ghosted across the conduits. The oracle wept, and the Emperor sealed him away so he could never speak again. Kalen staggered. The Sisters of Silence turned their masked faces toward him, awaiting command, but he had none to give. Every truth he had ever held was crumbling like dried bones. Another tremor rippled upward through the ground, this time stronger. The chamber groaned like a beast in pain. The psyker's voice returned, fractured and frantic. He is waking. The oracle is waking. And if he rises, if he breaks his prison, the throne will fail. The Astronomican will fall dark. The Imperium will be blind in the void. Kalen clenched his jaw. Then how do we stop him? The psyker tried to lift its head, but its body was failing, convulsing under the strain of its own existence. You cannot stop him. You can only choose how the ending begins. The words sent a chill down Kalen's spine. Either he must be silenced forever, or released. The Sisters of Silence stiffened, their hands gripping their blades. Even without emotions, they understood the weight of what had been spoken. Kalen took a slow, steadying breath. Tell me everything. No riddles. No metaphors. Why was this oracle imprisoned? The chamber dimmed, the red lights fading to a deep, suffocating gloom. The psyker whispered, because he foresaw a future where the Emperor's light would devour humanity instead of saving it. Kalen felt the floor shift again. Hard. The entire room tilted as though the world had been kicked by a god. The psyker screamed, not through its mouth, but through the warp. Awake! Awake! He is awake. A deafening crack ripped through the floor. A fissure split the metal plating at Kalen's feet, glowing with a blinding gold-white radiance from deep below. And then, something knocked from beneath the throne. Once. Slow. Deliberate. Kalen staggered back, heart pounding like gunfire. The sisters shifted into ready stance. The adept fell flat, praying in a dozen machine dialects. When the psyker next spoke, it was barely a breath. He knows you're here, Inquisitor. The fissure widened. Light poured upward. Something rose.